All right. Hello and welcome to On Surviving. My name is Megan and I'm a survivor.
My name is Nobly, and I am a survivor.
Together, we're bringing On Surviving to the world because it matters.
It matters to me because alongside the potent fears of our frail hearts is so much hurt, loss, and trust issues that I often had to navigate through all alone with very little resources and no trust. I am passionate about doing this is because I get to share my story and be the person to help with resources and hopefully make a difference in people's process of surviving.
And it matters to me because I want others to recognize the deep strength and rich humanity involved in every step in the process of surviving the tragedies life brings many of us. I suffered silently and alone for too long. And I want to help others to find hope more quickly and readily and feel and be less alone in the process of surviving.
On surviving matters because you matter and we matter.
Awesome. Well, really happy to get started in this. Of course, we always get started by just doing a check-in to see how we're showing up because you know what? Sometimes these smiles we start off the introduction with maybe by kind of a
Yeah.
little bit of a show and maybe not, maybe in some ways they're right on, in some ways not so much. So let me go ahead and share my screen. We just do a quick check down 7 wellness factors on a scale of 1 to 5. And let's see if I can actually show this. We can all see what we're talking about. So 1 on any of these factors is really pretty darn lousy. And 5 would be outstanding, amazing, super satisfied, what have you, whatever adjectives work that say this is awesome. So, Nobly, do you want to kick us off this
Yeah,
time? Great.
sure. I can do that. So my physical wellness is about a 3. Still have the torn meniscus and still trying to maneuver through that. I think my intellectual is about a 3 as well. Um, I I don't know. I get stuck just learning certain things, but then I don't try to go further with it sometimes. And that was my week this week. My environmental is 4. I think I do pretty good about recycling and respecting the earth and my surroundings. Occupational is a 5. Things are going really well with my new job, and everything there is great. Just 2 for emotional wellness. I've had a lot of things this last week. A friend passed away, and um, still have things with my nephew going on. My spiritual's a 4. Again, the only thing that's not making that a 5 is being outside more. I've been walking a little bit more, but I still need running water, like natural running water. And
I hear that.
yeah, and my social is a 3. I just kind of wanted to work and come home. This last week wasn't wanting to do too much um, outside of that. So I think overall, I'm just kind of not super, but not horrible.
And sometimes that is just a really good thing, right?
Yeah,
You're going through some tough stuff
yeah,
right now. And it would be okay too if some of those low numbers were lower, right?
yeah.
And the resilience I just find remarkable. If you don't mind me just commenting,
Oh no,
or
not at
okay,
all.
I find for me, I was noticing the uh how much my resilience has been building the further and further I get from some of the really hard things. So when new hard things come up, I find myself better able to balance, and I'm seeing that in you too. Does that seem, am I seeing that right?
Yeah, definitely. It does come, it comes and goes, often from moment to moment, or, from day to day, but overall, just being able to walk through that, and knowing what to do has changed so dramatically over the course of the last 5 years. And it all started with the deep healing,
Yeah,
and learning how to take care of yourself in crisis situations,
sure.
is so much better now. I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah,
Doesn't mean we don't have our bad times, because we do for sure, but I don't live in them. I gotta,
yeah,
stay strong. So
yeah.
you're right.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I'll go ahead and I probably should have taken this down while we were having that chat, but there you
That's
go.
okay.
It's still up.
Yes.
And I'll go ahead and jump into my check-in on these as well. And I just want to say right away that I'm really surprised that mine are all extremely high
Nice.
today. Physically, I am feeling really good. I over the past I had a friend here staying with me for 10 days, and she has some really wonderful habits. Both active, active habits, being active, and being out in being active in particular out in nature, and also eating well. And so I really like stepped up my game on all of that, and I feel
Nice.
physically incredible right now. So that's a 5. Intellectually, um do I dare say a 5? No, I won't say a 5, but I will say a 4, because holy moly, I'm just going to credit most of this to Caroline, who who was here visiting, because also just that like creative spark that happened, and my it's a very exciting uh, thinking. And I wrote a poem standing out in the middle of a bay, which was pretty amazing,
Yeah.
and got inspired to like really go down a track with the book I'm like in like this is definitely what I'm going to be working on, or what I am working on, and immediately flew into it. So yeah, brains a cooking. Emotionally, this is what surprises me. Emotionally, I'm a 5.
Yes.
um right. Oh my God. And it surprises me because I am in the midst of, and I'll just talk about this emotionally and environmentally. I'm going to just give it a 4, but in some ways I even want to give it a 5 because I'm in deep gratitude for where I am now. And the emotional part that is surprising to me is because I'm gonna be moving it soon, and leaving this place, which I have fallen in love with. And so, but I've been able to see I've been able to see what's important to me is always possible where I am, wherever that is. And so, because like you said, like I have some really good tools now. It's just, I get surprised. I can't believe
Yeah.
it. Spiritually also, uh, I'm gonna dare that's a 5. Socially, it's a 5. Uh, Both again tied to this wonderful experience where I just, you know, stepped into who I am, and yeah, unapologetically. I don't know. There was something really powerful about my friend's presence here, and yeah. Anyway,
I'm
it's good
so
stuff.
glad.
Yeah, I know there's plenty of tough stuff coming down the pike, but right now I'm in a good place, and I'm in an especially good place because I'm a big old introvert. And even though I loved having my friend here, and I loved having my parents here, who were here the 5 days before she got here, I need some downtime. And my husband's even gone. So little old me here with my cats who might make an appearance.
Yeah.
And I'm just feeling good. So I'm excited to have a little recharge time. And
Definitely.
occupationally, you know what? Um, yeah, we're just gonna it's gonna be a 4 only because it's not in full-fledged occupation, but I am on the right track. So I'm 100% confident in that. So
Nice.
that said, let's unless there's something else you want to talk about on the
No,
check-in.
no,
Okay.
I don't think so.
Yeah. All right.
Sorry.
Well, then no worries. Let's go ahead and dive right into our topic here tonight. We are talking about trauma, when it shows up, in particular, when it shows up in relation with others. We know it's super tough dealing on our own, and then we have to live in this world with other people at work, at home, at just at the grocery store. You know, and so yeah, we're going to talk a bit about the pieces that we each wrote on this topic, and then we'll kind of ground in what we talked about in writing of what that has been like for us. um and then we'll welcome our guest in to start talking about some things that are helpful in that context and things not so helpful, and maybe dream a little bit together about what could be even better.
Yeah.
Before we do that, I do want to share that, as always, we will speak frankly about our experiences. And when we do that, it could touch on something that triggers someone's own trauma. So please do, if you're here with us, um, take care of yourself first and foremost, and step away, reach out for help to someone you trust. And remember that even if it feels like there is no one that you can reach out to, that you are not alone. Um, there is help for you if you need it. And sometimes, even if there are people that you trust around, sometimes it's just easier to talk to a stranger, especially when you're in that really desperate space and maybe what you're feeling doesn't make sense to you. um I These crisis lines have always have helped me through some really tough spots. And by the way, if you ever call a crisis line and you get somebody that like, I don't know, they're not really getting what I'm saying, you can hang up and you can call back and talk to somebody else. Just a little helpful
Yeah.
tip from a frequent user myself. So you see on the screen, in the US, you can just dial 988, and you can get to from anywhere, anytime, for free. And since I'm coming from Mexico, I also wanted to share this 800-911-2000 number. And then there's a list of a ton of other countries' hotlines by country, which you can find on Wikipedia. So
Thank you.
that said, did I miss anything, Nobly?
No, I think you did great. I covered everything.
Lovely. Well, then let's go ahead and do a little bit of reflection on our pieces. So anybody who didn't get a chance to read them can kind of step in with us and what perspective we are bringing to this.
Yeah.
Um, I've been talking a hot minute. Will you pick it up and share yours, or do you? But unless you want me to.
I can.
Okay.
So my piece is about how people are they're dealt different hands, and people are born into trauma, and they have events in their life that they can't, that are out of their control, to no doing of their own. And how impacting trauma does affect, many, many people in the world. And unfortunately, I find that society is kind of quick to label people that, maybe they're not unemployable because they don't interview well, or they don't have a certain, look. All of a sudden they're not, productive members of society, or, bad interviewers or bad speakers, and just how people are quick to judge. And how often, because of that trauma victims suffer in silence, because they're afraid to say anything outward because of the judgment that they just feel. Not even People don't even have to say anything, to feel that they're being judged and looked at, and they probably already possibly feel, different, and so that just makes it all worse. And I go on to mention some incidences that were very close to me. One of them being my 18-year-old nephew. He has been very, very traumatized from a very young age, and so he wears a mask and sunglasses and a hood, because he feels protected if nobody can see his face. And as a result of that, he has had, trauma after trauma. He got into a little bit of trouble and was sent to the juvenile hall, and he was ridiculed in there because of his look, and nobody really stepped in on behalf, but they kept, writing all these things in his file that he was, a bad kid. And then it came time for him to be possibly released into a mental health foster home that would better suit his needs. He had to sit before an interviewing board, and because he had the hood and he was horrified and didn't know what to say, they went on to tell him that he is not suitable to go anywhere. And so he ended up staying there the remainder of his time and being ridiculed. And he came out far more traumatized than he went in. And so, and another incident was for me. I was, living on the streets at the time, and it was really hard for me to muster up strength to want to try to interview for a job, and I just go on to say how hard it was to go to a gas station bathroom and clean myself up, and go to a free clothing, closet to find clothes suitable, and to muster up the courage to put myself out there, and due to being nervous and a little bit twitchy and, whatever, I was told several times, "You're just not what we're looking for." And I actually was overqualified for a lot of these positions. I knew I could do it. I knew what I could bring to the table, but nobody gave me a chance. And so after letdown, I just went back to my homeless camp, and, just felt awful about life, about myself, and about how anything was ever going to change for me. Um, and basically about the lasting impact that, being treated this way has, on people, on us,
Right.
on people trying to survive through their trauma.
Right.
Um, so
Right. And one of I'm not going to talk about my piece right now, but just listening to you said, can't remember exactly the phrasing you used, is in particular talking about your nephew, but I think it's true. And what you're talking about with yourself too is this, that trauma and its impacts on us, is in us, but it is not us.
yeah,
And it's such a challenge to work through it when in this life, right, we have to do all these other things, right?
Yeah.
If you want to, um, be able, well, here's my cat. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's fine. Thank you,
um,
kitty.
yeah. So, that's interesting. Did you ever, okay, if I ask you a couple of questions?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, when you were going through that, were you conscious, like thinking about trying to go with, you'd mustered up this courage, you describe it really well, I think, in your piece. And
Yeah.
I was wondering if, like, when you're doing that, if you could kind of just feel, or if you were aware of kind of the uh your trauma and like trying to show up a certain way, and how did that come out, or did you actually like consciously wrestle with that, or was it just all kind of a spiraling blur, or something else?
Um, I wrestled with, the trauma. I was just so worried about I don't know, about being a certain way. Like I didn't know, I just didn't know. I can't really explain it. To be honest, it was so scary and so foreign, and it's like I didn't always get the strength. And so when I finally did, and I went through all this process, I think subliminally, I think I knew it was gonna be like this for me, but I just kept hoping, like maybe if I did everything perfect, somebody would give me a chance. So usually I was just so hyper focused on, how I was being, and it was just one letdown after another after another, that it started becoming few and far between I would get the strength to do it again. Because it was like nobody's gonna there's and then it goes back to the trauma. It's saying there's something wrong with you. Like this might be the best that you're ever gonna have. And then so then that, then I wrestled with that too.
Right,
So
that self-doubt and the
yeah.
dwindling hope.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so that's something that we have hugely in common in our experience. Like the hope would come up and you try to tap into it, and
Yeah.
then, but because you're kind of, I mean, you're still like really struggling in this, early in a healing process, and maybe like have some really active effects of trauma going
Yeah.
on, and compounding issues, that it just, yeah, it just fall back down again. I'm curious now, and I'll we can move on in a minute, but I do have this question for you, because your piece focuses on these really acute, active trauma, like the big stuff,
Yeah.
coming up, and you're in a different phase, a different place, and I'm curious if you notice, some of those effects still coming up now, um or, yeah, when you're, say, you've got this new job, or in other jobs that you had previous, in any of your, family or friends. Yeah, I'm just curious if you're still seeing kind of bits of that show up at all.
Yeah. It's not super often, but if I don't fully take care of like all aspects of my health, my mental, my physical, my, all of that, and and the trauma shows up, I sometimes will get into like a shutdown mode, then it'll kick my mental health in, and then I'll be, and little pieces show up. Um, Here and there. It's so much less than it used to be, and I'm so grateful for that, because but I still sometimes will have a triggered, my PTSD will be triggered. And that's scary because you don't know where you're going to be. You don't know what's going to bring it on. And I think that what's helped me a lot is, and this is always so hard for me, is letting people truly know where I am. The people that I can trust, just say, hey, I am freaking out. Like I don't know what the hell to do. I don't know where this is coming from. And I don't, and so
Yeah.
and that's something that I never did before. I never would let anybody in here
Yeah.
at all,
Yeah.
because when I did, I got hurt.
Yeah.
And so I think I think when it does, and I'm honest with where I'm at,
Yeah.
I can, I have the help that I need to work through it, I think.
Yeah. Let's definitely help us remember to bring that up again.
Yeah.
As I when pause joins us, pause is
Yeah.
our guest, by the way, anybody listening.
Yes.
So yeah, that's such a juicy point. So yeah, let's come back to that.
Yeah.
um Anything else you want to share about your piece, or anything kind of addendum to it, like I've been probing at you?
I just want to say, like, it's just really sad, and it's really wrong, because uh, just my nephew and myself, and how hard it is just to be, just to get up and do, daily life without having all this other stuff. And
Yeah.
I just man, I just want to do everything that I can just to make some, anybody's day just a little bit easier.
Sure. Sure.
And just just the only other thing is just how important, like, um genuine random acts of kindness,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know
Right. And you're
just
right. For anyone, we're
yeah.
hands down, we're all dealing with some sort of shit in our lives. That's just part of
Yeah.
being human.
Yeah.
And there's this added layer of challenge then, when, you know, no fault of your own, somebody has done something horrible to you, like there's some horrible just accident of life
Yeah.
that happens to us. um and and then trying to make your way through all those ordinary challenges of life, everything gets so much bigger. And
Yeah.
yeah, and especially when we're like talking about real trauma, that which creates real post traumatic stress.
Yeah.
And these are, yeah, these are big challenges that, I think we as a community can do better about addressing. We'll talk about all of that a little
Yeah.
bit, but
You betcha.
I want to go ahead and share a little bit about my piece now, so we don't
Yes.
let pause linger too long, because it's that
Yes.
that side is like really where the conversation does get extra juicy.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Megan.
Yeah, thank you for sharing
Yeah.
all of that and letting me ask some extra questions. So I started out my piece, and throughout actually piece kept referring to um my experience of um the effects of trauma inside me, as this kind of a monster, which is what it really feels like. I mean, especially, after I've had some distance from, the multiple points in my life where I have experienced um, severe trauma, which caused PTSD, to separate, in particular, two separate pieces uh, that I've been treated for through EMDR, eye movement desensitization and rehabilitation, something like that. Don't quote me on that.
It's a lot of words.
It is a lot of words, but designed to treat that like acute trauma, which was a wonderful um, tool and wonderful treatment. And I still have this lingering kind of what feels like this uncontrollable monster that will come out in me. Like it's like that, think about that fight or flight response when I feel threatened, when I'm triggered. And that can come out, and it's really in harmed. It's caused me to lose relationships that were important to me. It's caused troubles at work, um, and um, yeah, especially in some really, what I keep referring to as these acute phases, like when it's just really alive, and so it's coming up a lot, and actively experiencing that post-traumatic stress. So one of the things I do kind of talk about and I want to emphasize actually is those phases. And I'd like to just take a moment to describe a little bit about what is for me, knowing that, of course, it's different for everybody. But because I had been sexually abused as a child, and then actually had lived through additional assaults as a teenager, and at a few different points. Um, then I was in that kind of youthful, like, it was strange. I had like this kind of hopeful, like searching for my way in the world, like wanting to put it somewhere, but without any real guidance. And so I was kind of erratic, right? I made choices that weren't great for myself. And I was really, in retrospect, dealing with this acute post-traumatic stress, which eventually led me to a suicide attempt at 19. And after that, I started to get some tools, but I went in, but I don't know, maybe it was still that kind of youthful, like just I was grasping still, trying to find my way. And I went into this phase where I refer to as this sense of imperviousness. Like no one, I just put this big tough wall around me, and that was walling, to me it felt like my armor, or like people couldn't hurt me, but it also was kind of an armor to myself, right? So and I was using more alcohol and drugs to help kind of ease the edges and manage life, of course. And then I had my another phase which kind of overlapped with that, and I think helped with that, to kind of supported that sense of imperviousness, but also made me feel a little bit more human, was the 11 years of my daughter's life. And I was really digging into this, like, all right, well, I'm going to do better. Like, I'm going to be this positive force in the world, and, like fix it. So it's like still like in this like reaction to all of it. And I remember people always commenting on how strong I was then. And then they continued to comment on how strong I was after she died. But that was a big shattering of the, because that impervious, that like tough shell is, it's fragile. And shoot, when that breaks, um, it's like the breaking of the dam, right? Um, and so really launching then into substance use, in particular alcohol for me, but other drugs as well. And really, which was all part of kind of keeping me alive. I remember that just murky time. And of course, my throwing myself into work and sex and these other things that were to keep me away from feeling this second, that next round of trauma, which, sorry, I, for folks who don't know, it wasn't like just, wasn't that the, of course, not just, my daughter died, and that was awful in and of itself. It was also in an accident that I was in with her, and I tried to save her and couldn't. And that whole experience was extraordinarily traumatic for me. Um, and would have, could have, um, uh, well, did threaten my life, but I wanted so badly to see her again, and believed that wouldn't happen, um, if I tried an attempt on my life again. So anyway, really leaned into all of those other crutches that I could find to help me just get through this life until I could be with her again. And then that was just not going to work. And so the next phase was when I actually went into recovery and just spiraled into, um, yeah, just into deep, dark depression, isolation. And it was a very scary, it was probably the scariest time in my life, because by then I had alienated um, most people from my life. The people I hadn't alienated were buddies in drinking and drugs, and that was no longer a part. So, and I was terrified to tell most people how I was feeling, um, because I was sure that no one wanted to hear it, and they would reject me the way I felt like other people had rejected me, and like just didn't they didn't want me around if I wasn't showing up that strong person. And of course, eventually, there, through a variety of interventions in that process, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I describe, I don't think I described it so much in the piece, but I will say now, was a slow climb to where I am now, um, which feels grounded, um, most of the time,
Yeah.
peaceful, mm, a fair amount of the time, um, and hopeful, with a sense of real possibility in this life again. And I want to be here. Um, and yeah, so yeah, I really have to do a lot of things to maintain that. And I'd love to talk with that a little bit more when our guest comes on, about the kinds of things we can do to structure our lives, uh, and what possibilities are when maybe I feel really lucky and blessed at this moment in my life because I could make some choices for myself. Um, and kind of curious about other strategies when maybe folks don't have, maybe aren't at that place where they can put as much space for healing in place as I can. So but I think there's a lot of more options than when we're actively like reeling in the effects of trauma. um there's there are still some things we can do to, like, day by day, get that like slow climb where there's more and more um uh possibility. um Still, the experience has been that even in that slow climb, even in today, like I was asking you about, Nobly, um my I still have that monster come out if I don't give myself enough space and grace. If I'm not open about what I'm dealing with, and that maybe I need some space or I need some time, and I'm going to get this to you, but I need another day
Yeah.
because I just need to be, I need to be quiet today, or I need, I have these cycles where I need like this kind of deep, like um, soulful cry, soul level cry. I don't know how I want to put it exactly, but I can feel like when there's like this buildup, and it's like I just need to shed some of that and exhale, and okay, now I can whew, feel
Yeah.
myself again, right? And not just this stuff, this buildup, that kind of monster starting to get restless, I guess, you know. um so yeah, not trying to be a Pollyanna about any of this, um because you know but I think that there's just a lot of opportunity for us, um and for the people around us, to support that healing
Yeah.
faster, better, less alone. So, um, let's see. Um, any other thoughts about kind of our experiences that you want to emphasize before we bring on pause?
I don't I don't think so. Sorry.
Oh, that's perfectly fine. Good. That's good. Yeah. One of the things I guess I will say one more thing. Um, we are still in this process. And I think that 2 days from now, 2 months, 2 years, 20 years, uh, God willing, um, uh, we will have new things we understand about this. So we're not coming into this as experts in anything but our own lives,
Yeah.
our own experiences, our own strength and hope. And so that's what we're here to share, and hope in this process that we will continue to unfold, and even come back and say, I said that thing before and that
Yeah.
wasn't totally right, or
Right.
I said that thing before and this other thing. So my hope is that we'll just continue to learn together and support each other in this space, and so we can all
Yeah.
do better. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say really quick too that my entire life was it started with trauma at 2. And so I didn't really know anything but trauma. And so when when I'm trying to heal and recover from this, it's so foreign. Like it was so foreign to me, and it still is in certain times. So I just want to spread hope to everybody that's listening too, that it does get better, and it, even though it feels scary and all that stuff at the time, because it's been, my entire life has been, trauma and trauma and trauma. So just I just don't want anybody to give up, because it can get better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Super, super with you. I will continue to probably repeat this, remembering sitting in the middle of
Yeah.
my grass in my backyard thinking it was never going to get better. And holy, I was
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
Um,
Me too.
and I look forward to anybody um, listening, to finding out that they're wrong about
Yeah.
that too.
Same.
Um, cool. Well, let's talk about some stuff that that has been helpful for us. Some stuff that has really not been helpful, and some ideas. But to help us with that conversation, I have invited and would like to introduce our guest, Paz Bryant. Paz, will you go ahead and come on screen while I share a few lovely things about you? Paz, welcome. Paz is
Good evening.
the good evening. I'm just going to talk while you just sit there with your lovely face on the screen. That Paz is the executive director of the Apprentice of Peace Youth Organization. It's actually the co-founder of it as well, and which is pretty amazing. Paz is also a part-time consultant. I have had the privilege to work alongside Paz. Just the way you show up is so um impressive, so thoughtful, and just really real and a wonderful, I think, guide to folks. In particular, the consulting work that you do is around diversity, equity, inclusion, as well as strategic planning, and sometimes strategic planning on diversity, equity, and inclusion, right?
Yes.
And last but not least, Paz, I'm lucky to count as my friend. So Paz, welcome. I'm super glad you're here. I'm sorry we're not doing this over Indian food. And anything else you want to share for folks who are joining us about yourself?
Oh, well, since you brought up Indian food real quick, I just went to our spot last week, actually. So
I'm super jealous.
Yes. I just had to throw that in there. But no, thank no, thank you all for having me. I think it's an important conversation to be had, and for others to be able to share and listen and hopefully gain some confidence in being able to share their story and voice the things that they've experienced and are dealing with in their lives.
Awesome. Well, thank you. That's our hope too. And really, really glad to have you here, especially, given the kind of work that you do, which I'm hoping you'll tell us a little bit more about. But first, can you just tell us a little bit about what made you interested in this topic and doing work related to um, mental health and such? Yeah. So
Yeah.
what was it in the first place?
I think there's a number of things. First of all, we know it's a topic that's not discussed enough, whether it be youth related, adults related. Ultimately, a lot of times, it's young people with health issues or concerns or trauma, or, ultimately we all grow up with these things and we become adults with these things. And, the hardest thing to do is ask for help. So a lot of times we don't ask for help because we feel it's a sign of weakness, or, feeling pressure from other places, or people not believing you or not understanding, and those types of things. So I think it's super important from that point, especially considering the impacts of this pandemic and all of those things as well. But it's also a personal thing. I think having been exposed to it in the way that I have really just changed my view and perspective on it, because for a lot of us, I think when it comes to mental health, trauma, and those types of things, growing up, we were accustomed to, quote unquote, using the word crazy. And that's what, things were attributed to when people were, exhibiting signs of having any sort of mental health issues, whatever it was. And so I don't think it was ever given any real, credence or validation when it started to be a more general conversation amongst people. And, myself as a young person, being probably 18 or so at the time, trying to figure out life, not having a father around, coming from a home where domestic violence was pretty, rampant and a regular occurrence, if you will, and not really having anyone to talk to. A lot of the things, you all mentioned in terms of keeping things in and kind of putting on this shield of armor was what I did. And I can remember one particular time where I actually went and climbed a tree and sat in a tree. And the comments that were made about me sitting in that tree were like, it almost was heartbreaking, because everyone has just assumed that I was quote unquote crazy and that something was wrong with me because I went and sat in a tree because I needed to think. I felt, a lot of different things. I wasn't sure about life and things going on, and just some of the trauma we deal with in general, some of the trauma just in the community, some of the trauma within our culture. And especially as, the Black and brown people are cultures where you don't talk about these things, it's hard to, really find any support. So I would say that's really always been something where I've been interested in. And ultimately, as it relates to the work in terms of running a youth organization, we originally founded it based on teaching Tai Chi. And in the process of doing that, we would have conversations with students. And because, within our program, it's really about being your best self and all of those types of things. And ultimately, a lot of the conversation revolved around mental health and some of the trauma that the students was dealing with and all of those things. So it became even more apparent of how important the topic was.
Wow. So your program kind of evolved with the young people you were surveying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we started to adjust and align ourselves to be intentional and kind of in being trauma informed, and really being intentional about supporting students in that way. And even kind of to take a step back, as a part of that process, and even for myself, at that particular time or prior, just prior to it, I'd gone through a divorce, and my children had moved away back to my home state of South Carolina. So ultimately, I was looking back at it, I was in a state of depression, and I really didn't have anyone to talk to, and I did lose friends in the process because they just didn't understand, and they didn't understand what I was really going through, and so within part of that process and kind of learning the Tai Chi and actually going through a 5-year medical Qigong program, which I did because I wanted to learn, but it was also an opportunity for me to heal as well too, which ultimately deals with a lot of energy cultivation and refining and those types of things. And so I feel like I was able to recalibrate myself energetically and put my best self forward and continue to create the life that I wanted.
Oh, wow. That's huge. Thank you for sharing that. Actually, I just learned some some new things about you. I really, really appreciate that, my friend. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So it sounds like you can really relate to some of the things that we were talking about. Are there any other kind of any things that you would say that is similar or different between your own experiences and some of the things that Nobly and I have talked about? Um, yeah, I'm just going to
Yeah.
stop there for right now.
No, I think each of our experiences are unique, but the way often that we deal with them are often the same, which is coping mechanisms ultimately, right? Things that may have a positive short-term effect, but long-term aren't really healthy for us, like drinking and drugs and sex and all of those things. When I was young, there was a point in time when I was homeless as well in multiple states. And again, it was assumed that I was this crazy person, and things like that. And while, I did, I think, have parts of my life or times where I did contemplate suicide. I never did it clearly, but it was definitely a thought, to an extent. To at one point, I'd gotten arrested for some marijuana, and when they do the intake and bring you in, they ask you, "Are you suicidal?" And I said yes. And so when I went in, instead of having a regular suit, they basically gave me like the medical gown. And so I had to be in jail full time for the time that I was in there, for a couple of weeks, a week or two, with nothing but a gown on.
Wow. That must have been traumatic in and of itself.
Absolutely. I don't think I even realized it, right? Because, again, we don't talk about it as a culture. And if it's not like, emergent situation or whatever, right? People almost overlook it or dismiss it, right? Or if they don't understand, it's it's dismissed. But yeah, and then I think as men, we're taught to, not cry, pick yourself up, and not even just men. I think, women have that as well too, and people in general are kind of, with, as a society, it's kind of like, just pick yourself up, figure it out, you'll be okay, type of thing. But we're not going to really help you.
Right. So, right. Crying is a sign of weakness. Right. But so you just pick up and move on. But of course there's no help. Okay. Yeah. I've just repeated what you said. It's just like this. I can't underscore it enough. It's not helpful for anyone.
No, absolutely. And so just kind of thinking that process, and having relationships, like you said, of where you shut down, and you don't necessarily communicate. And it's something that I know, that was often brought up in my first marriage. It's something that is still kind of brought up in my marriage, because I will shut down. And, but one of the ways I'm really striving to be better about that is, the fish philosophy, if you're familiar with that, about the Pikes Peaks or Pikes Fish Market out in Seattle, and how they took that whole concept and started creating some organization culture stuff around that. But one of the concepts they talk about is choosing your attitude. And I strive to choose my attitude every day, right? Because I can choose to bring a positive attitude to whatever I'm doing and wherever I'm at, or I can be the down, depressed, isolated person. And so I try to choose the attitude every day and just try to, communicate, be intentional about communicating. But I think it's all a process at the end of the day. And we have to have the space to be able to do that. We have to have trust to be able to do that, and have the right support system around us. And to be honest, in some of the experience and other things that I've seen with people that I know and people who are dealing with mental health issues, sometimes we need an advocate. We need somebody who is advocating for us, because unfortunately, and especially when it comes to mental health cases, if you are not able to say it yourself, you won't get the help.
Right.
You won't get the help. And even if somebody is there advocating for you, like, you have to be able to say it for yourself, but they don't know that this person may not be able to do that. Right. So does that mean that they shouldn't get help or be able to get help? And I'm saying this because we're actually dealing with this with a family member right now who has very clear mental health issues, and it's been a couple years, and it's kind of escalated to the point where they've been criminalized for it. So where you talk about some of the stuff, and I actually was talking to someone the other day about, we talk about the school to prison pipeline, and someone mentioned the disability to prison pipeline as well too. And I was like, wow, I never thought about that. And these are the types of things that are ultimately going on, and oftentimes people don't get help until they're in those places,
Right.
which is unfortunate.
Yeah. And then sometimes in those places don't get the help either.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
You're just stuck criminalized. And actually have a have a good example of that from a friend of mine as well, but I won't tell her story. She can come on and tell her story sometime too. So yeah. So you've started actually going a little bit into this, talking about a little bit of some things that are helpful. I'm curious if you both would like to move into that now, or pause. Or there other things that you kind of want to underscore in the experience that you've had in that, maybe personally and or working with young people? Yeah.
I mean, I think it's really just understanding that everybody has a story, and there's things that people are dealing with that you just could be completely oblivious of. And so we have to be intentional or mindful of just being considerate of people, and questions when there are things that we may not understand, or that we, want more information on, and allowing them to say it for themselves instead of making judgments and criticizing and or judging people for their perceived limitations.
Yeah I appreciate that. I'm sorry I keep talking so much, but I want to go back to this. One of the things that's a refrain in my piece is that it's that trauma is in us. It isn't us.
Absolutely.
It's not us. And I love what you were talking about there, when you were talking about how we see someone as quote unquote crazy, and it seems like we see somebody in a moment, and we see that as all that person is. And that point where you were talking about, sometimes we need an advocate. So like let's use this as a jumping off point, because that's one thing when I was doing a lot of work around planning around homelessness or houselessness, is that I would notice, like, people wanted people who were like really struggling, people living on the street, like, and getting re-traumatized. That the experience, I shouldn't speak for you because you both have that direct experience yourselves, but what I understand is that that is also traumatizing, just in that experience alone. And to ask somebody in that place to necessarily be able to advocate for themselves, that's a tall order. And and I talked about when I was young, right, and how I was like spinning. There were a couple of different places in my life where I was spinning, and I couldn't articulate even what I was feeling enough to ask. But I could, now I'm at a point where I can look back and see it in myself. I can see it in others, which I also actually, a part of my piece, I talk about seeing it in another person during a project. But so that's great. Nobalee, did you ever have a good experience of when somebody advocated for you that was really helpful?
Yeah, when I was living on the streets of an Olympia, it was when I would finally get out of the woods, I would often go to this Interfaith Works homeless shelter. And Meg Martin was one of the main people there, and she would advocate for me on some of the stuff when I would let her, and I was beaten very, very, very badly in the streets. Both my eyes just beaten badly, and I didn't want to go to the St. Pete's because I knew they would let me out of there at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I was afraid. So she had, a nurse come in and sit with me all night at the shelter, and just that shelter, I feel like in a lot of ways, like kept me alive. The person I was on the streets with was incarcerated constantly. So it was just me out there. And that's when the trust no one came in. Like, I trust no one. I carried a bamboo stick in my back, and I was ready for par. Around every corner, I was ready for par. And so when I finally did, I just, the trust thing, like I couldn't trust anybody. And so that made it hard in the beginning. And somebody told me, it was my sponsor, said, think before you say anything. Is it going to benefit anybody what you're going to say? And like, I am the most patient person in the drive-through. I go to pick up my prescriptions at the Safeway pharmacy, and you would think I'm celebrity. Everybody, yeah, because I try to just spread happiness and kindness, because what Paz was saying, we just don't know. And just because somebody looks, put together, or they might roll up in their Mercedes with the business suit on, don't let that fool you. You don't know what they're going through. You just don't. You don't have to be, on the streets talking to yourself to be crazy. You know what I mean? And that was like me. I couldn't. I'm Native American, and my dad's favorite thing in his whole life to say to me was, you got to be fucking tough to live in the Pacific Northwest. Suck it up, nobly. And so it's like, so then I grew up fighting, and I fought, and in homelessness, I fought, in my addiction, I fought. So here I have this crazy record of assaults galore to add to my resume. You know what I mean? And it's just, I think at the end of the day, if people would just listen to people, no matter who they are, where they are, what they look like, what they drive, if they're clean, if they're dirty, if they're black, if they're white, just listen, because you don't know what that person is going to say to you that they need to get off their chest, that might make their whole entire day, week, month, year different. Because nobody's advocating for them. Nobody. But if we all do our little part to advocate just for anybody that's trying to talk to us, you know what I mean? That's my ultimate wish, is that we can all just, in this fast-paced world where everybody's just on the road, even in driving, everybody's a bully, kind of, like, stop, let me in, it's just the simplest things. I will let 4 cars go, and the person behind me wants to choke me out, and they're flipping me, and they're, because it's okay. I'll get where I'm going. Just let a couple people go. So anyway, I'm just for somebody that was so angry, like, I would just, when I needed to feel something, I would like go into a bar and like, what are you looking at? And just want to fight everybody. And now I'm here at this point in my life where I just want to love on everybody. Like, I just want to love on everybody. And it may just start with looking that person that's flying the sign on the street in the eyes. I was that person, and it was so hard for me to be out there. And when people wouldn't even take the time to look me in the eyes, even if you don't want to give $1, just look at them, because they are people.
Yeah.
And they deserve to be looked at, because whatever trauma brought them to where they are, I guarantee it's substantial.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And that I keep thinking, I keep thinking that this, getting through this, can't can't be left to each one of us on our own. That pause you were talking about, in No Believe time, is just, like what your dad was saying, just pull yourself up. I mean, and that's a real pervasive idea throughout uh, cultures in the
Mhm.
United States, right? That
Yeah.
individualist push that is, that somehow we're supposed to get through this stuff on our own. And who does that?
Right.
I am very clear that the only reason I didn't end up on the streets is because I had some resources that I was lucky. I didn't just do anything to deserve those. I was lucky enough to have come across people in my life who were able to help me. And you know, and it really seems like that is the difference between me not ending up um losing everything, almost everything anyway, and somebody else who does. And so it's that community and whatever the support system. And I feel like we can't leave it to that chance. There has to be some sort of more systemic way that you know folks don't just get left to getting lucky,
Mhm.
right? Especially because we
Yeah.
know when we have been hurt, when we are um whether it's from domestic violence in our homes, or assault, or in Noble's case, all actually a number of things, but starting off with the murder of your brother. um the we're really reeling with these things that we're uh not our fault. Frankly, I don't even care if it is our fault. Some
Right.
things later on, I got hurt because out of reactions, choices I was making because I was reeling from other trauma, right?
Mhm.
And it doesn't make any of us more or less deserving. Like, we as a community are going to be better when we help each other better, and there's got to be some better options. Sorry, soapbox there for a second.
No.
Anybody
No,
else want a
it's true.
soapbox?
No, y'all are hitting a lot of great points, and I think the a big one is that vicarious trauma that's kind of passed on to us from a generation that really never got the chance to deal with their stuff.
Yeah.
Right? They never got the chance to deal with their stuff, so a lot of that stuff was passed on to us. And to be, honest, this is probably the first, especially the generation now, the first ones who are where this is like a real priority and an intentional, thing.
You bet.
So, um, it's just good to be in that space, because there was a time where it was like, yeah, you don't say nothing, you figure it
Mhm,
out, go drink
mhm,
some water, go lay down, and you'll be okay.
mhm.
Right.
Right,
And that was the solution.
right,
Yeah.
right, right. You talked too about how you mentioned earlier how in Black and Brown communities it's especially like hard to talk about these things, and I totally so can hear that. Um, and you can see it showing up from culture to culture to culture, from community to community,
Mhm.
and you're right, especially that generational thing, because I know it I remember how embarrassed uh i I could feel my parents feeling
Mhm.
when they were taking me to see a counselor, um
Mhm.
after what happened to me as a kid. And I mean, I remember feeling like that said something about me, that there was something wrong with me. And I
Mhm.
also remember later, like, being in a job, and how very clear it was that you needed to hide if there was anything wrong with you, because
Mhm.
you would be at a disadvantage. And I know very clearly about racism that was in the work, which we still find all around us, And I think about those compounding issues, right? I have a level of privilege because I was born as a Swedish American person, right? And yeah, and then it just compounds, and it's got to be harder and harder to need to talk about these things. I mean, at least just from a purely thinking about all of the barriers that are to us in society for
Mhm.
being able to be ourselves.
Mhm.
Our yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And not realizing how connected we really are, and the struggles, that we go through as people, and how connected they are. As much as the civil rights is touted as and is, been about, the quote unquote African Americans and people here. The actual civil rights bill also talks about people with disabilities. It talks about, how you identify, all of those things. It
Mhm.
protects people from all areas of life, right?
Yes.
So again, understanding how connected we really are and how similar our struggles or the experiences that we have, how similar they are. And then just realizing that, like you said, there we need to have a better system for how we address those issues and being able to support people, because at the end, especially when you have family members, friends, or people that you're supporting right in that space, for a lot of people, they eventually get fatigued. And that's where people get left right to their own vices, or left out in the woods and those types of things, because people, they get fatigued. They don't know how to deal with it. And because they're not able to advocate for themselves, they can't get the help that they properly need. And it's, and I can say that because the experience, again, in dealing with a family member and striving to advocate and get that help. Like, I literally called a place and was telling them and trying to get the support and get the help. And they were like, well, they have to call themselves, but what can we do for you? I'm like, there's nothing wrong. I'm great. Like, this person needs this and they need this, and this, and they can't say it. Like, what do you want me to do?
Uh,
And it's like, it's really frustrating. It is really
yeah.
frustrating.
Yeah. 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 Um, so what uh so one thing that we could do better then is making space and taking seriously advocates who are stepping up for people who are in like in that spinning, in that acute um trauma or
Mm-hmm.
acute mental health is showing up,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I mean, trauma impacts when we're dealing with PTSD. That's one mental health challenge, right? So I also major depression,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety. Like what else we're talking about? Those things.
Bipolar, all of the things.
Bipolar. Mhm. Go ahead,
Yeah, I was just
Mark.
saying, yeah, all of the things,
All the
neurodiversity. There's so many different things that are happening, and so many components to it. And that's the thing. There's so many layers. We strive
right,
to put it all in one box, or one,
right,
look at it from one angle, but it's
right.
not that simple.
Right. And each of those conditions, right, that we deal with, they change
Right.
over time, right? How they show up in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
how we manage them. I mean, there are certain things that I talk about, like that have really helped me later, like in those later phases I was talking about in
Mm-hmm.
this slow climb. Like one piece of advice I loved was just, because I was like major, like severe depression, right? But I was still trying to do things, right? I was like
Mm-hmm.
desperately trying to like hold on, and like my work and all of this stuff was something that I was trying to cling to, even though I was in no mental or emotional space to
Mm-hmm.
really be doing it. So I had a coach that my employer actually hired for me. I mean, whoa, what an amazing thing that is, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Who could, and the coach, and I could just be my messy self. And coach, she gave me this little piece of advice to, she's like, okay, she heard me, like, that I was getting down on myself. I was internalizing those messages. And so she's like, okay, can you do one thing each day that you can feel good about? It doesn't have to be huge, just one thing. And little by little, I could do two things and then three things. And it started to stack up, and my self-esteem began to build, right? Nobly, you talk about in your piece, I loved that line, which is not immediately in front of me, but that line where you talk about, what would be great if there was a place I could go to, um, buy some or get a dose of
Self-esteem. Yeah.
self-esteem, right?
Yeah.
Holy,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree with everything that you're saying. And I sponsor women now, and I tell them to take a Post-it note and put one thing that you want to accomplish for that day on your fridge, and and mark it off. And what helped me too, to start to feel different about myself and my self-esteem was positive affirmations. You just have to tell yourself one good thing about yourself every day, because that's what came around when I started to not hate myself. If you can just muster one thing up to tell yourself. And one other thing I just want to say really quick is my nephew, the one that I mentioned in my piece, he stabbed himself in the heart 2 weeks ago, and he's alive, but he is in the emergency room, awaiting a psychiatric bed. And the entire state of Oregon, every bed is full, and half of the state of Washington, every bed is full. So he's having to be housed in the emergency department. And I'm just wondering, could some of this have been avoided to get people some help before they end up in these beds?
Right.
And that's why this is so passionate for me, because this child has been sitting in there for over 2 weeks, just sitting there. And the emergency room is very small. The room is very white, and the lights are very bright, and he can't have anything. And it's not helping him. It's not. And so it just, yeah, the beds are full.
Yeah.
They're full. So
Bottom line, we need more resources.
yeah.
Here's one of the things I love about Pause's organization.
Yeah.
I've bragged on it a lot, but I was so excited. One time I'm on the I get the newsletter and whatever blast emails that come out, and they were fundraising to get mental health counselors in the schools. I was like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, yes,
So
we
good.
need more of that. Paz, you want to talk about any of those kinds of things that y'all have done that's the other things that is more helpful, in particular, especially like just heard Nobly talking about her young nephew. What kinds of things do y'all do?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, striving to make sure people have access to resources, that they're aware. And a lot of it, from our perspective, and in terms of the youth organization, is coming from the youth themselves. So the youth have put together a lot of the information. They lead a lot of the conversations, and making it or destigmatizing, talking about it, because that's, again, a huge piece is that we're not having the conversation. And a lot of it, I believe, is, misconceptions and the perspective that people have about it, and not realizing that at the end of the day, we all, in the same way that we have physical health, we have mental health. And sometimes mental health, we need, some help and or support. And so, those types of things. And, with emphasizing wellness and self-care through Tai Chi and just slowing down, we definitely do a lot of goal setting things as well. And then we talk about creating plans. So I teach a modality called the WRAP, Plan, Wellness, Recovery, Action Plan. And within that, we talk about the 5 key concepts of hope, education, personal responsibility, self-advocacy and support. And then within that, talking about identifying our triggers, talking about what's in our wellness tools. So, how we're able to address things as they're coming up, what our daily plan needs to look like in order for us to have a good day, and having a plan for that. And ultimately it's plans for all of these things. And then being able to identify early warning signs, right? When the check engine light comes on, like, okay, something is going on, and I'm in this space or whatever. And then as things get worse, and then as we get into full-blown crisis, and then another key part of that is after the crisis, right? Because after the crisis, we kind of come to our senses and realize that we might have to go apologize to some people. We might have to go make amends somewhere, something like that, right? But having a plan for that, and being able to identify who we want to support us, right? And what type of support do we need? Who do we not want to support us, right? And those types of things. And so it's very much become an integral part of the work.
Wow. All of that sounds so powerful.
Yes.
I mean, the first powerful thing that jumped out at me was that self-awareness piece. Like, how how amazing that is. Is that a resource that is available to others? Is that's a class that you teach that others could take, or are there printed resources or written resources?
Yes, you could definitely find RAP online. We got certified in it. It's probably been almost 3 years now. Wow. Since I've been teaching it as a part of what we do. But yes, you can definitely find it online. It's Wellness Recovery Action Plan. The lady that actually developed it was dealing with mental health issues herself, and it was trying to put on medicines. Her name is Mary Copeland. And they were trying to put on medicines and doing all type of things, and none of that stuff ultimately was working. And she kind of came up and started creating some of these concepts and some of these things to help, which is what helped her to get better. And it became something, an evidence-based curriculum that's used in a lot of different spaces now.
It's totally beautiful. Did you want to comment on it, Nobly?
Just other than I think it's amazing, and I want to look into it.
Yes,
I wanted
to. You want to bring it to you're the people you're serving, right?
Yes, I do.
Absolutely,
I really, I do.
Well,
yeah.
I would love.
It is.
Go ahead. No,
I'm just saying it is a good tool. It is definitely a great tool to have, and I think it just allows you to be aware of what your triggers are and the things, and really being intentional about identifying and having a plan for how we deal with it. Yeah. Because especially when we have those triggers that we aren't fully aware of and realize that they're even there.
Right. But, well, and go ahead, Nobly.
Oh, I was just going to say really quick that all the drug and alcohol treatment that I've had to go to, in the past with extensive addiction, was they always tell you to identify your drug and alcohol triggers. And that's they always hit that home, but nobody, well, you are, but in the past, nobody's stopped to say, let's identify your mental health triggers.
Right.
And so how great would that be that was just like a curriculum? Like, I mean, that this is what we're making more aware, especially to these youngsters, like,
exactly.
to have a, like it was a relapse prevention plan, to keep yourself from relapsing on the drugs and alcohol. But how about a mental health trigger response plan? You know
exactly.
what I mean? Where it can be blasted on your refrigerator like a pulsed form would be from your doctor, where it can say, in case, Nobly is in, because I'm bipolar, is having a manic high, here's the steps to help her through that.
Exactly.
And then I'm going to blast this. I work in an office. I'm going to blast this on my office. And if a coworker walks by my cubicle and I'm,
Right.
they're going to say, okay, check it out. First, we're going to get her outside into some fresh air. And then we're going to call her mom. She's listed as her number one go-to.
Exactly.
And then we're going to, and I bet you by the time you work yourself down to number 5 on this list, I'm going to be good to go.
Absolutely.
You know,
We call it early.
not. I mean, I'm jamming.
Absolutely.
I'm jamming the rest of my day out. It might not be that every single time,
Right.
but man, that right there, we're doing it.
And again,
Yeah.
that's that check engine light coming on, right? It may not be
Yes.
nothing serious, but if we
Yeah,
wait too long,
but
by the
it's
time we
gonna
get to
be.
it, it's gonna
You
be.
betcha.
You
You
know,
betcha.
and when it comes to the drugs and alcohol, that's a coping mechanism. So we
Mhm.
already passed the trigger. We're in
Oh, yeah.
crisis right now, right?
Yes.
At the end of the
Right.
day. And so it's the thing is we get comfortable with the coping mechanisms, so they seem like the normal thing to do, but it's not. It's long term, right?
Yep.
It's not the thing for us. So
No,
yes,
and it lets more stuff build up in there, and actually leaves us much more vulnerable to bigger breaks down the road, which hello, I have experienced personally.
Okay.
I also really loved the thing in there that you talked about, that sometimes we need to make amends with folks, right? I love both the side of like there's this community plan. I like nobly you're talking about, and to bring those support systems in, and that the people who are around us can help be part of the solution, and so that gets to be much faster and easier. And sometimes in the process, I know I can act like an asshole to somebody, and I need to go
Yeah.
and the thing is, if I don't make amends, that weighs on me, and then I
Mhm.
feel worse about myself. And and just leaving that kind of rubble behind ends up just not being good. But we then get to heal as a community, or each time we have the courage to take those steps to make amends. And ideally, if the person receiving is like going to be open and create the space for that to actually complete that
Mhm.
and accept that and be willing to understand that we're all human, and to
Absolutely.
give us some grace, and see
Yeah.
us as the full wonderful people we are, and not just um a
Not
behavior
just
that
our
wasn't
trauma.
awesome.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, we're not our trauma.
Yeah,
No.
absolutely. Oh my gosh, this is
Oh, so good.
oh, so good.
Pause. It's been such a pleasure doing this with you. Like you, yeah. Just
Thank you. It's been amazing listening to you as well.
thank
I feel
you.
feel a little connected to you now.
I know, me too.
And
Same.
yeah, especially like pause. You noted it like I don't know, 20 minutes, half an hour ago. That these things we share,
Yes.
and there's so
Yeah.
much that binds us, and the more we talk about it, the more we see it.
Mhm.
And yeah, get away from that isolation and individualist stuff. We're going to be better together. So any other I'm just going to count those as my final words on the topic. I know there's much more that we can say. I want to encourage actually both of you, pause if you, I don't know if you're on Facebook, maybe if you wanted to jump in, or if there's anything else you want us to share on your behalf, including the resources. Would love to do that. But before we do, but recognizing that there's more to be said, is there some sort of closing kind of send off, that to wrap up, at least for now, for this moment in time?
Go ahead, Nobly.
Oh, I just want to say that the process of OnSurviving, it's hard. It can be hard, but you can get through it, and people are here to help you get through it. And I guess just spread that kindness like it's going out of style.
Absolutely.
Just kick it old school style. Do unto others as you'd want do to you. It can be that. It can be that. Just yeah.
And I'll just add kind of to what you're saying and to the overall theme on surviving and I'll just say on the way to thriving. Right.
Yes.
And getting to that point, and just continue to have these conversations and paying attention, because I think it's so easy to not pay attention, like you said, not look at people and not see them. Right.
Yes.
We see their trauma, or we see their title, or whatever
circumstance.
Exactly. Exactly. So, and thank y'all for the amazing conversation. It has me reflecting on a lot.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you both. And we do encourage folks to reach out, add, of course you can add comments right on YouTube. If you're not on Facebook, you can also do it on our OnSurviving Facebook page, and always welcome to message us privately if you're not comfortable doing that in a public space, but because we are we want to be part of the community and part of the support system as well. So you do matter. And I with that, I want to say very excited for 2 weeks from now, our next episode. We will be talking about We Matter, right? So a nice transition to that. Amazing. We have just, I think the three of us have had, moments in our lives where people have looked, could have easily, stepped over us, or, kind of thrown away. There are times I felt thrown away, and look at the wonderful impacts we're each making in the world today. So that's just a little teaser into what we'll be talking about. And I'm very excited that Kwika Montoya will be joining us. She is program director for Safe Outdoor Spaces, which is a program of the Colorado Village Collaborative. And she is a remarkable human being, and I just super excited to have that conversation, and hope lots of people will join on the bandwagon and brag on themselves a little bit, because we matter. Yes. So with that, we close with our two medicines nobly. Lead us off with the second.
Okay, so this is for you, Paz. What happens when you teach a wolf to meditate?
Ooh, this is a good one. I don't know what.
It becomes an aware wolf.
I love it. I'm feeling it.
Yes.
I love it.
I love you so much.
I love the water. I'm so excited to take a drink of my blackberry hint.
Yes. Well, cheers to you.
Cheers, you
guys. To deliciousness.
Cheers.
Love you all. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, you guys. Bye.